Hello, my name is Virgil, and this is Literally Books. Today, I want to talk about Brian Evenson's novel, Last Days. Before I start, I want to say thank you to everyone. I recently hit 1,000 subscribers. It was pretty awesome. I don't know that I'm going to do a 1,000 subscriber video per se, but maybe I'll do something. We'll just have to see. But anyways, I just wanted to take just a second and say thank you to everyone. It is a huge milestone. So, Last Days. I got recommended this by Aaron, a friend of mine, and it's honestly wonderful. I really like it. It may not be for everyone though. It's a horror novel, or I guess you would call it a horror novel. Probably classify it as like body horror or psychological horror or something. Its form, the shape that it takes, the type of story is like a hard-boiled mystery, hard-boiled detective mystery, maybe, or like or like crime fiction. I almost feel like I shouldn't say much about anything that happens after the first chapter. It's an experience, in a sense. Very entertaining. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to give you the setup, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what it felt like to read the book, and then I might do after that just a little bit of what I would say almost spoiler, but not exactly, but maybe get a little bit more descriptive if for somebody who maybe isn't as convinced by all that. The setup for this book is this. A police detective had encountered in his work some sort of criminal. I don't think we're ever told what kind of criminal. And in this encounter, his right hand is chopped off, the detective. He self-cauterizes his own stump and then shoots this criminal in the face through the eyeball and kills him. Takes some of the money that this guy had, and then essentially he can't work as a police detective anymore because he has no hand. So now he has like a retirement fund and he has this money. So he doesn't need to work anymore. But he is immensely depressed. It's obvious that he is super depressed, and so depressed to the point that like he can't really function anymore. He doesn't really want to function anymore. He doesn't really have a connection to anyone. It seems like there is no one else in his life. He's sort of by himself. And the first chapter begins with him getting these phone calls that are like three-way phone calls, or these two other men calling him, asking him questions about this incident, and like trying to convince him to get on a plane and fly to where they are. But they never really give their names. And what's great is right off the bat, you get this tone of like these two characters are talking to the main character, Klein, but but they're also sort of like talking to each other. And there's this weird sense of like this. There's a lot of the book is just like this is dialogue. A lot of the book, it seems like, is dialogue. And it's this back and forth dialogue that those two characters are having on the phone, talking to Klein as well. And it just is this like kind of weird ping pong sort of like talk, like, oh, like ask him this. What about, hey, what do you think about this? Ask him if he wants to come where we are. Do you want to come where we are? Like stuff like that, right? And it's so. But the thing is that it is funny. You as the reader are like amused by this, but none of the characters seem to be in on the fact that this is humorous, and it kind of it was strange. I have read a little bit of Evenson's fiction before. I've read a short story by him, and I like that short story. It was the first short story in the glassy, burning floor of hell, and I like the short story. But I felt like it had a lot of similarities to Bizarro fiction, and it did, and this novel does too. And I had a not stellar experience with my one experience with Bizarro fiction, which was it like, I can't remember what the name of the book was, but it was a Carlton Melton III book, who's kind of like known for like, I guess, sort of creating that genre, or is most known in that genre of Bizarro fiction. And I did not really like the particular book that I read, so I wasn't sure what to think about this book. At first, when I got that Bizarro fiction feeling in that story, I was like, I don't know. But where I had a problem with that story that I had read of Milton the Third's, where it felt a little juvenile. It felt like things were just random things thrown out at you, and nothing was really ever done with them, or not really in a satisfying way at all. That's not true here. That's not true at all. There's a touch of it. It's the whole book has this sort of pervasive, odd mood. You're never quite sure where to put your foot down. You're not sure if this is. I had a hard time telling, like, is this serious or is this being played for a joke? And I couldn't tell. But I think what helped me to get through this, and what I think was convinced me, was that it made sense. It made sense. This character, Klein, who is extremely depressed to the point that he just like stops eating at some point in that first chapter, just basically just like not gonna sustain himself anymore. That this character who's that apathetic to life, like, can't really like wake up and sort of ask questions like, what's wrong with you guys? Or why would I want to do this thing? Why would I want to come to where you guys are? Why are you so obsessed with me cutting off my own hand and like cauterizing it and asking me all these questions? Like, you're a bunch of weirdos. What's wrong with you? He never can like wake up enough and say those things that we're thinking, that I was thinking as a reader, that I think most readers would think. Like, what are you doing? What's happening? He never can quite do that. But it makes sense because he's in such a deep depression. And that sort of carries you deeper and deeper into the novel. And you just like feel Klein getting sucked deeper and deeper and deeper into this amputee cult. And it's just, and of course it starts off in one direction, and it starts off very much, and it very much is crime fiction or detective fiction. It very much goes down that path. It uses all the tropes. It uses that entire tool set, the tool set of a crime or hard-boiled detective fiction. It uses that tool set, but it just uses the tools in ways that you're not expecting. So much of the character interaction is through dialogue, and this dialogue is always or often has slightly comedic elements that none of the characters are in on. None of the characters in this book are laughing about the stuff that they're saying or the interactions. It's like they don't have any distance from it. Like, they can't even see what they're saying, how weird it is. Or that maybe they should say, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Why would I think this thing? Or why would I want to do this? But like I said, it seems to make sense. And it gets to be so pervasive that I found that, like, sometimes you can't tell if Klein, when he's talking to someone, if the person he's talking to is a weirdo, like some kind of weird person, or if they're normal and just the tone of the book is weird. You just can't tell. I mean, I really was like, I'm not really sure. Like, maybe it's just Klein's perception of the world is so skewed at this point because of how he feels, because of his apathy. So Klein does get sucked into this amputee cult that, like I mentioned, and that's not spoiling anything. That's literally how the book is selling itself to you. And he's to solve a crime. And I really like how that progresses and how it just defies, like, what you would think a detective or a mystery story should do. It just defies it, like, right out of the gate. It's like, well, like, this is the mystery, and it's like, okay. And it just does some strange and great things with it. And of course it keeps evolving. This book is hard to talk about. Every time you take another step, another chapter in, you get deeper into this. You feel how much farther away you are from where you started. And you're just like, man, this is so strange. It's like I'm just getting sucked in, just like this main character. I'm just getting sucked into this mystery, and it's becoming normalized. And also, I guess I should point out, since it's a book about amputee cults, right, and that there's body horror involved here, that this book is not exactly gross, right? This isn't, I don't feel that this book is splatterpunk. It is grotesque, right? It is grotesque. So it does deal with, like, descriptions of things that are extreme violence, right? It does deal with those for sure. But it isn't trying to make you sick or to make you flinch, so to speak. In fact, it de-emphasizes all that violence. It really does. It doesn't It doesn't stress it. It happens when someone were to get shot, for example. There's not any more emphasis put on that than maybe somebody signing their name to a paper per se, right? It's not like giving a bunch of like graphic, like really descriptive language about it. It's just a thing that happens and it's very snap. And then this thing happens and it's very snap. And it's like that, which I thought was great. I thought it was really, it puts you a little off balance because it's not stressed like you would be used to. I have a comparison to make, but I'm a little reluctant to make it because I feel like it could give the wrong impression of the book. But if I was going to compare it to a movie, and there's lots of things I could compare it to, right? But the most easily accessible, I think that the widest audience will recognize and appreciate would be the movie Sin City. It's a little bit like that. And I want to stress that it's only kind of like that. If you love Sin City, you might like this book. I think you should check this book out then. But it doesn't mean that you're going to get the same experience. This is not that kind of experience. That movie, for example, does sort of stress that that violence, right? Whereas this book just does not. And it's also like, this is a strange thing to say, wonderfully psychotic at parts, right? I really appreciated the journey that this book took and how it took it. I really liked it. So I guess I'm going to do a little bit of, it's not exactly spoilers per se, but I want to try and like talk a little bit about some things that happen in the book to kind of show you like a little bit like what it feels like to read this book, because it's difficult for me to express without starting to get specific or without getting into elaborate examples. So, spoilery stuff, right? So for the comedy, and it is comedy. There is genuine comedy in here. Of course, you are the only one laughing because the characters don't get it. But it's also like you're not even sure sometimes, like, am I supposed to be laughing at this? Is this supposed to be a joke? At one point, there's a few characters sort of sitting around talking to each other. And one of the characters wants to relate something to the other characters. And he says, so-and-so is dead. And the other characters are like, so-and-so is dead. Are you sure? Yes, so-and-so is dead. Oh, no. So-and-so is dead? I can't believe he's dead. Well, who's dead? So-and-so. Oh, so-and-so is dead? Well, wait a minute. I mean, he might be alive. So-and-so is dead? Well, he might be alive. So-and-so is alive, but he might be dead. He's either dead or he could be alive. He's alive or dead. He could be alive or dead. And that's like the kind of like conversation and how it goes. And the whole time I'm reading this, I'm thinking, what is happening? Because no one see, like anybody could be alive or dead. Like anyone you could like, what do you think about so and so over there? He could be alive or he could be dead. It was just like, God damn it. There's none of the characters are in on that joke. None of them realize it. At some point, the mystery is a lot less important. And sort of like the impetus for this all to begin is sort of discarded, it felt like. Like, we're not interested in that anymore. Now we're over here doing this thing. And it's just sort of like, well, what about this? But you just have to stop. You just stop. It's like, that's why I say like these tools are used in an unusual way. Like the tools of a mystery detective story say, well, this is what's going on. This is where the plot is going. But then at some point it's like, yeah, we don't care about that anymore. We're not going to use that tool anymore. Now we're going to go this way. Now it's like this. And you're like, you just kind of are bewildered. You're like, okay. That's why I said, like, you're not really sure where to put your foot down. You're not really sure, like, is this going to happen? Or like, I was sort of like, oh, I know it's going to happen. I even said at some point to Aaron, I think he said this. I think this is going to happen. Well, I was wrong. I was wrong. That is not what happened. I don't know that I could not have predicted the ending of this book, but I would have had a really, really, really hard time seeing the direction that this book went. I'm trying to think of fiction that's similar. I find similarities to this, like Peter Klein's like 14 maybe, or something like that, or maybe like John dies at the end. Like, that's kind of, it's a similar sort of stadium. I think if you like those novels that you should give this a try. Again, not like gross out stuff, but definitely like focusing on the grotesque, right? Like things that you normally would not want to look at. And also just this pervasive oddness, this pervasive, like, this is so weird isn't even right. It feels odd. I think that word works a little better. Odd. You're just like, so odd. Not many books can have such a memorable experience. This is absolutely a fantastic read. I really struggled with, what to give it as far as stars go on like Goodreads or something. I ultimately gave it 5 because I feel like it is stronger than a 4. I feel like it is stronger than a 4, and I didn't want to shortchange it. I'd rather give it too much credit than not give it enough. Super love this. This was great. I am definitely going to read more Evenson stuff. I'm going to look at that other book that I've got of his now, and definitely check out some more stuff. There's a couple other books. There's a really great Afterword by Peter Straub in here that talked about a couple other books and his experience with encountering Brian Evenson. So I'm definitely going to look into some of more of Evenson's stuff. Just a fantastic recommendation, Aaron. Thank you so much. I've got that fantasy recommendation video recorded. Now I need to do some editing stuff to it because it's not super short. It's probably going to come in just under an hour. 38 writers, right? This is such a difficult task. Anyhow, that's all. Thanks very much. Bye.